such project.
Uzbekistan quite actively supplies electricity to the Afghan market. We plan to increase the volume of supplies 2.5-fold once the construction of the Suram-Pulikhormi line is completed.
Diversification of transport networks is one of the key tasks of the landlocked countries of Central Asia.
Connecting Central Asia and South Asia is really important in the sense that especially landlocked countries like Uzbekistan can reach out to the port and sea, and it means that it's becoming a part of the global supply chain and trade network.
Landlocked Uzbekistan is expanding new transportation corridors and recently initiated a new project, the construction of a railway through Afghanistan to Pakistan. By connecting South and Central Asia, it is expected to stimulate the Afghan economy, open a direct path to Pakistani seaports and further to India.
If you look at the map, Uzbekistan and the countries of Central Asia will actually have the shortest path to sea lanes.
Some Uzbek businessmen say that when the Kabul Corridor Railway is constructed, it will open up incredible potential for businesses, as it is expected to reduce transportation costs and shorten paths for goods.
When we import potatoes from Pakistan, we spend a lot on logistics, and as a result, the goods become incredibly expensive. God willing, this road will open and will be very beneficial for Uzbekistan, as well as for Pakistan and Afghanistan.
One of the key goals raised at the Tashkent conference is to restore the historical trade routes that have linked the countries of Central and South Asia since ancient times. How can regional connectivity between Central and South Asia be developed? This question tops the agenda of a recent international conference in Tashkent, initiated by Uzbekistan. Over 2 billion people live in these regions, and the benefits of improved regional connectivity cannot be underestimated.
Uzbekistan suggested not to focus on problems and not to focus on contradictions, but instead to focus on development projects in the areas of trade, transport, infrastructure development, and tourism.
The conference was attended by delegations from Central and South Asia, as well as by representatives from the US, Russia, the EU, business leaders, and entrepreneurs.
Connectivity is not just about concrete and steel, it's not just about physical infrastructures, it's about the digital revolution and how to make people-to-people contacts.
Participants discussed how to make the region more interesting to global investors. Panel discussions spanned the transportation, trade and cultural sectors. The question of the future of Afghanistan was another focus point.
The strategy is to turn Afghanistan into a kind of bridge that will unite Central and South Asia.
Uzbekistan is working on expanding regional cooperation and infrastructure projects. The construction of a new electricity power line that will bring energy to Afghanistan is one such project.
Uzbekistan quite actively supplies electricity to the Afghan market. We plan to increase the volume of supplies 2.5-fold once the construction of the Suram-Pulikhormi line is completed.
Diversification of transport networks is one of the key tasks of the landlocked countries of Central Asia.
Connecting Central Asia and South Asia is really important in the sense that especially landlocked countries like Uzbekistan can reach out to the port and sea, and it means that it's becoming a part of the global supply chain and trade network.
Landlocked Uzbekistan is expanding new transportation corridors and recently initiated a new project, the construction of a railway through Afghanistan to Pakistan. By connecting South and Central Asia, it is expected to stimulate the Afghan economy, open a direct path to Pakistani seaports and further to India.
If you look at the map, Uzbekistan and the countries of Central Asia will actually have the shortest path to sea lanes.
Some Uzbek businessmen say that when the Kabul Corridor Railway is constructed, it will open up incredible potential for businesses, as it is expected to reduce transportation costs and shorten paths for goods.
When we import potatoes from Pakistan, we spend a lot on logistics, and as a result, the goods become incredibly expensive. God willing, this road will open and will be very beneficial for Uzbekistan, as well as for Pakistan and Afghanistan.
One of the key goals raised at the Tashkent conference is to restore the historical trade routes that have linked the countries of Central and South Asia since ancient times. How can regional connectivity between Central and South Asia be developed? This question tops the agenda of a recent international conference in Tashkent, initiated by Uzbekistan. Over 2 billion people live in these regions, and the benefits of improved regional connectivity cannot be underestimated.
Uzbekistan suggested not to focus on problems and not to focus on contradictions, but instead to focus on development projects in the areas of trade, transport, infrastructure development, and tourism.
The conference was attended by delegations from Central and South Asia, as well as by representatives from the US, Russia, the EU, business leaders, and entrepreneurs.
Connectivity is not just about concrete and steel, it's not just about physical infrastructures, it's about the digital revolution and how to make people-to-people contacts.
Participants discussed how to make the region more interesting to global investors. Panel discussions spanned the transportation, trade and cultural sectors. The question of the future of Afghanistan was another focus point.
The strategy is to turn Afghanistan into a kind of bridge that will unite Central and South Asia.
Uzbekistan is working on expanding regional cooperation and infrastructure projects. The construction of a new electricity power line that will bring energy to Afghanistan is one such project.
Uzbekistan quite actively supplies electricity to the Afghan market. We plan to increase the volume of supplies 2.5-fold once the construction of the Surum-Pulikhormi line is completed.
Diversification of transport networks is one of the key tasks of the landlocked countries of Central Asia.
Connecting Central Asia and South Asia is really important in the sense that especially landlocked countries like Uzbekistan can reach out to the port and sea, and it means that it's becoming a part of the global supply chain and trade network.
Landlocked Uzbekistan is expanding new transportation corridors and recently initiated a new project, the construction of a railway through Afghanistan to Pakistan. By connecting South and Central Asia, it is expected to stimulate the Afghan economy, open a direct path to Pakistani seaports and further to India.
If you look at the map, Uzbekistan and the countries of Central Asia will actually have the shortest path to sea lanes.
Some Uzbek businessmen say that when the Kabul Corridor Railway is constructed, it will open up incredible potential for businesses, as it is expected to reduce transportation costs and shorten paths for goods.
When we import potatoes from Pakistan, we spend a lot on logistics, and as a result, the goods become incredibly expensive. God willing, this road will open and will be very beneficial for Uzbekistan, as well as for Pakistan and Afghanistan.
One of the key goals raised at the Tashkent conference is to restore the historical trade routes that have linked the countries of Central and South Asia since ancient times. How can regional connectivity between Central and South Asia be developed? This question tops the agenda of a recent international conference in Tashkent, initiated by Uzbekistan. Over 2 billion people live in these regions, and the benefits of improved regional connectivity cannot be underestimated.
Uzbekistan suggested not to focus on problems and not to focus on contradictions, but instead to focus on development projects in the areas of trade, transport, infrastructure development, and tourism.
The conference was attended by delegations from Central and South Asia, as well as by representatives from the US, Russia, the EU, business leaders, and entrepreneurs.
Connectivity is not just about concrete and steel, it's not just about physical infrastructures, it's about the digital revolution and how to make people-to-people contacts.
Participants discussed how to make the region more interesting to global investors. Panel discussions spanned the transportation, trade and cultural sectors. The question of the future of Afghanistan was another focus point.
The strategy is to turn Afghanistan into a kind of bridge that will unite Central and South Asia.
Uzbekistan is working on expanding regional cooperation and infrastructure projects. The construction of a new electricity power line that will bring energy to Afghanistan is one such project.
Uzbekistan quite actively supplies electricity to the Afghan market. We plan to increase the volume of supplies 2.5-fold once the construction of the Surum-Pulikhormi line is completed.
Diversification of transport networks is one of the key tasks of the landlocked countries of Central Asia.
Connecting Central Asia and South Asia is really important in the sense that especially landlocked countries like Uzbekistan can reach out to the port and sea, and it means that it's becoming a part of the global supply chain and trade network.
Landlocked Uzbekistan is expanding new transportation corridors and recently initiated a new project, the construction of a railway through Afghanistan to Pakistan. By connecting South and Central Asia, it is expected to stimulate the Afghan economy, open a direct path to Pakistani seaports and further to India.
If you look at the map, Uzbekistan and the countries of Central Asia will actually have the shortest path to sea lanes.
Some Uzbek businessmen say that when the Kabul Corridor Railway is constructed, it will open up incredible potential for businesses, as it is expected to reduce transportation costs and shorten paths for goods.
When we import potatoes from Pakistan, we spend a lot on logistics, and as a result, the goods become incredibly expensive. God willing, this road will open and will be very beneficial for Uzbekistan, as well as for Pakistan and Afghanistan.
One of the key goals raised at the Tashkent conference is to restore the historical trade routes that have linked the countries of Central and South Asia since ancient times. How can regional connectivity between Central and South Asia be developed? This question tops the agenda of a recent international conference in Tashkent, initiated by Uzbekistan. Over 2 billion people live in these regions, and the benefits of improved regional connectivity cannot be underestimated.
Uzbekistan suggested not to focus on problems and not to focus on contradictions, but instead to focus on development projects in the areas of trade, transport, infrastructure development, and tourism.
The conference was attended by delegations from Central and South Asia, as well as by representatives from the US, Russia, the EU, business leaders, and entrepreneurs.
connectivity is not just about concrete and steel, it's not just about physical infrastructures, it's about the digital revolution and how to make people-to-people contacts.
Participants discussed how to make the region more interesting to global investors. Panel discussions spanned the transportation, trade and cultural sectors. The question of the future of Afghanistan was another focus point.
The strategy is to turn Afghanistan into a kind of bridge that will unite Central and South Asia.
Uzbekistan is working on expanding regional cooperation and infrastructure projects. The construction of a new electricity power line that will bring energy to Afghanistan is one such project.
Uzbekistan quite actively supplies electricity to the Afghan market. We plan to increase the volume of supplies 2.5-fold once the construction of the Surum-Pulikhurmi line is completed.
Diversification of transport networks is one of the key tasks of the landlocked countries of Central Asia.
Connecting Central Asia and South Asia is really important in the sense that especially landlocked countries like Uzbekistan can reach out to the port and sea, and it means that it's becoming a part of the global supply chain and trade network.
Landlocked Uzbekistan is expanding new transportation corridors and recently initiated a new project, the construction of a railway through Afghanistan to Pakistan. By connecting South and Central Asia, it is expected to stimulate the Afghan economy, open a direct path to Pakistani seaports and further to India.
If you look at the map, Uzbekistan and the countries of Central Asia will actually have the shortest path to sea lanes.
Some Uzbek businessmen say that when the Kabul Corridor Railway is constructed, it will open up incredible potential for businesses, as it is expected to reduce transportation costs and shorten paths for goods.
When we import potatoes from Pakistan, we spend a lot on logistics, and as a result, the goods become incredibly expensive. God willing, this road will open and will be very beneficial for Uzbekistan, as well as for Pakistan and Afghanistan.
One of the key goals raised at the Tashkent conference is to restore the historical trade routes that have linked the countries of Central and South Asia since ancient times. How can regional connectivity between Central and South Asia be developed? This question tops the agenda of a recent international conference in Tashkent, initiated by Uzbekistan. Over 2 billion people live in these regions, and the benefits of improved regional connectivity cannot be underestimated.
Uzbekistan suggested not to focus on problems and not to focus on contradictions, but instead to focus on development projects in the areas of trade, transport, infrastructure development, and tourism.
The conference was attended by delegations from Central and South Asia, as well as by representatives from the US, Russia, the EU, business leaders and entrepreneurs.
Connectivity is not just about concrete and steel, it's not just about physical infrastructures, it's about the digital revolution and how to make people-to-people contacts.
Participants discussed how to make the region more interesting to global investors. Panel discussions spanned the transportation, trade and cultural sectors. The question of the future of Afghanistan was another focus point.
The strategy is to turn Afghanistan into a kind of bridge that will unite Central and South Asia.
Uzbekistan is working on expanding regional cooperation and infrastructure projects. The construction of a new electricity power line that will bring energy to Afghanistan is one such project.
Uzbekistan quite actively supplies electricity to the Afghan market. We plan to increase the volume of supplies 2.5-fold once the construction of the Surum-Pulikhormi line is completed.
Diversification of transport networks is one of the key tasks of the landlocked countries of Central Asia.
Connecting Central Asia and South Asia is really important in the sense that especially landlocked countries like Uzbekistan can reach out to the port and sea, and it means that it's becoming a part of the global supply chain and trade network.
Landlocked Uzbekistan is expanding new transportation corridors and recently initiated a new project, the construction of a railway through Afghanistan to Pakistan. By connecting South and Central Asia, it is expected to stimulate the Afghan economy, open a direct path to Pakistani seaports and further to India.
If you look at the map, Uzbekistan and the countries of Central Asia will actually have the shortest path to sea lanes.
Some Uzbek businessmen say that when the Kabul Corridor Railway is constructed, it will open up incredible potential for businesses, as it is expected to reduce transportation costs and shorten paths for goods.
When we import potatoes from Pakistan, we spend a lot on logistics, and as a result, the goods become incredibly expensive. God willing, this road will open and will be very beneficial for Uzbekistan, as well as for Pakistan and Afghanistan.
One of the key goals raised at the Tashkent conference is to restore the historical trade routes that have linked the countries of Central and South Asia since ancient times. How can regional connectivity between Central and South Asia be developed? This question tops the agenda of a recent international conference in Tashkent, initiated by Uzbekistan. Over 2 billion people live in these regions, and the benefits of improved regional connectivity cannot be underestimated.
Uzbekistan suggested not to focus on problems and not to focus on contradictions, but instead to focus on development projects in the areas of trade, transport, infrastructure development, and tourism.
The conference was attended by delegations from Central and South Asia, as well as by representatives from the US, Russia, the EU, business leaders, and
Good afternoon to everyone. I hope you can hear me well and see me well.
Absolutely, Dr. Akram, we can hear you.
I hope today my connection is much better.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, perfect.
Let's pray that it will remain like that. Yeah.
Hopefully. Let's hope for this.
Yeah.
Could you give me the right to share the screen? Now I don't have such right.
Probably not at the moment when we call you to deliver your talk. And
Okay.
that's where the sharing of the screen will happen. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Then if it's not problem at that moment, no, I don't see any problem as well.
All right. I'm trying to change my virtual background here. All right, let me see, Professor Hadaria Barron, and all right, Dr. Akram is of course already in. We're just waiting for our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor T.S. Dr. Hajaruzia. She'll be joining us shortly. Well, in the meantime, we can chat and just, chill a bit here without the audience here. We are still in our chat private room. Yeah.
It seems everything is working fine.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Ms. Zainab.
Walaikum salam. How are you? Well back.
Embassy of Uzbekistan. Thank you. Alhamdulillah. And you?
Yeah. So, Cik Raja, are we ready?
Okay.
All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to everyone, and also a very warm greetings from sunshine Malaysia. But of course, you see it's been raining for a couple of days, and that marks the arrival of the monsoon season in Malaysia. But I take this opportunity to thank all participants today for joining us in our 5th International Lecture Partner Series. First of all, we would like to take this opportunity to thank the Embassy of Uzbekistan for, as always, being very supportive in our endeavor to connect to our partner universities. And Alhamdulillah, today we are able to have Dr. Akram Omarov from the University of World Economy and Diplomacy, Uzbekistan, on a very central topic of discussion today. That is on Central and South Asia, regional connectivity, challenges, and also opportunities. All right, so things are happening right now, events in Afghanistan, and so forth. So perhaps it will be very exciting to hear that. So very quickly, as usual, as a quick scene setting, we welcome all audience. Again, we will alert you that we have put up a Q&A pigeonhole that you can channel your questions there. And at the end of the session, Dr. Akram will be more than happy to engage with everyone and answer your questions. And of course, with us, we have Mr. Albek. Thank you very much, representing the Embassy of Uzbekistan in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Welcome. All right. So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can straight go into our program today. So as a starting point to begin our program and to grace this event, we are very fortunate and we're very happy that the Yang Berbahagia, Professor T.S. Dr. Hajar Roziah Muhammad Janur, who is our Deputy Vice Chancellor for Academic and International, and also exercising the functions of the Vice Chancellor of University Technology Mara, that is here to do her welcoming remarks. So Professor T.S. Dr. Hajar Roziah, the floor or the screen is all yours. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Zainab. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The honor, our esteemed speaker today, Dr. Akram Umarov, University of World Economy and Diplomacy, Uzbekistan, Mr. Albek, representative of the Embassy of Republic of Uzbekistan in Malaysia, Yang Berbahagia Professor Chemist Dr. Hadaria Bahrun, Assistant Vice Chancellor Internationalization UITM Global, Yang Bersua Dr. Hajar Zainab Haji Muhammad Noor, Director Department of International Affairs UITM Global, of course staff and students from UITM. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon to all in Malaysia and good morning to our guests in Uzbekistan. So thank you for joining this our 5th International Partners Lecture Series at University Technology Mara, in short UITM. And this is our signature event given by international speakers on a spectrum of topics beyond classroom and lecture halls for all to benefit. I'm thrilled to see quite a number of you from across the globe online to join in today's lecture by Dr. Akram Umarov from the University of World Economy and Diplomacy, Uzbekistan. Inshallah, we are adapting well to the new normal lifestyle, and I would like to thank Dr. Umarov for making the time to share his international experience with us. He's here all the way from Tashkent. All right, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today's event marks a progressive step towards acknowledging and celebrating our partnership with the Embassy of the Republic of Uzbekistan in Malaysia. We hope to develop stronger network with global institutions and organizations in Uzbekistan to place UITM on the international scene and make an impact globally. The main objective of having this International Partners Lecture Series is to enhance international networking between UITM and foreign organizations. We have to use our international networking to push the boundaries. I hope today's event will make you think globally and create partnerships and collaborations with international partners at your departments or faculties for mutual benefit. I therefore strongly encourage collaborations with international partners and start thinking outside the box, whilst adapting to this new normal. And create something new together, be bold, embrace ambiguities on your way to becoming responsible global citizens despite the challenges ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia and Uzbekistan established formal diplomatic relations way back in February 1992 and have a strong relationship as trading partners. The foundation for development of friendly relations and mutually beneficial cooperation was laid during the official visits of leaders of both countries discussing trade and economic, tourism and education. Our own history, UITM, began on the 23rd December 2019 when our former Vice Chancellor, Emeritus Professor Dato Insinyur Dr. Muhammad Azrai Kasim visited Samarkand and established bilateral cooperation in the implementation of long-term joint projects in education, training programs, and staff training, which culminated in the signing of a memorandum of understanding from UITM. For your information, to date, we have sealed our relationship until 2023 with seven institutions in Uzbekistan on various areas and disciplines. We are now engaged with the Tashkent State Technical University, and this one quite difficult for me to pronounce, but Al-Yud Umidi Foundation, under the Cabinet Ministers of Republic of Uzbekistan, National University of Uzbekistan, Silk Road International University, Samarkand State University, Tashkent State University of Economics, and Tashkent Institute of Finance. This reflects a strong partnership between institutions in Uzbekistan and UITM especially. To establish stronger ties between Uzbekistan and UITM, we had the pleasure of hosting His Excellency Ravshan Usmanov, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary, to our 5th Ambassadorial Lecture on the 23rd of April 2021. That was earlier in the year. In addition, the Faculty of Computer and Mathematics, Computer Science and Mathematics hosted 33 Uzbekistan students for online global class, virtual global lecture series program from March to July 2021, as well as receiving Uzbekistan visiting professors to give talks at the faculty. Ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished guest speaker today, Dr. Akram Umanov, will highlight, as been mentioned by Dr. Zainab earlier, Central and South Asia, regional connectivity, challenges and opportunities. The talk will examine the evolution of the approaches adopted by the countries of Central and South Asia to the settlement of the Afghan conflict, as well as attempts to influence the development of the situation in the country. We will have the chance to listen to changes in Uzbekistan's approaches to Afghanistan and the establishment of multi-format cooperation between the countries on the implementation of large-scale infrastructure projects to connect Central and South Asia through the Afghan territory. The most recent developments in Afghanistan with the withdrawal of the US troops will have definitely an impact on these efforts. In the changing landscape of higher education, where organizations are compelled to become transnational, With multinational workforce, it is incumbent upon educational institutions, especially UITM, to expose students and staff alike to the broadest international topic as much as possible with an event like this. The culturally and globally aware community serve as a model that utilizes all resources. Global outlook is pivotal for a well-functioning 21st century institution. And of course, constructive relationships with international partners makes UITM become more globally significant. This is why global experience is important for all of us. With that, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me? Ladies and gentlemen, I know that everyone is looking forward to the talk by Dr. Akram Umarov. I hope you will be able to take away some important points highlighted later by Dr. Umarov. With that, thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. Good part of the day, depending on where you are. And it's a real honor for me to be here today and to present part of my research, which is devoted to the connectivity between Central and South Asia, and it was a special role of Afghanistan in this process, how it's kind of linking at the same time, slightly complicating this connectivity process. So let me start sharing my presentation. Just a second. I hope you can see it now.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. So let's move forward without any delays.
Yeah.
So the topic
Okay, Dr. Akram, Dr. Akram, just
yes?
1 minute. We'll get going. I know Prof. Rosie may not stay with us throughout, but we would like to thank her for delivering her welcoming remarks just now. But we'll be happy if she's here with us throughout. But I know she has other activities, so we would like to say thank you to Prof. Rosia, all right, for her welcoming remarks just now. All right.
Yeah,
so thank you once
definitely.
again. Back to you, Dr. Akram.
Thank you. I'll be watching your recording material. No problem.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, it's for sure. Many thanks for very warm and kind greetings, and let me move forward. Then the topic is again what has been mentioned: Central and South Asia regional connectivity, challenges and opportunities. So today I would like to talk about how Uzbekistan is receiving this connectivity, how we can see the developments in regional security issues in Central Asia, and also how it's influencing the current developments in Afghanistan, how we're seeing our future connectivity with Central Asia. And it has very kind of strategic background, and it's linked to the recent important changes in Uzbek foreign policy. Definitely, Afghanistan has always played an important role in Uzbek foreign policy strategy, but especially in the recent years, we have kind of reconsidered our approach to Afghanistan. And I will talk on this, elaborate on this a little bit more later. But what I'm trying to say that Tashkent now is trying to establish closer bilateral contacts with South Asia, using opportunity of this transit potential of Afghanistan, its connectivity potential between these huge regions of Central and South Asia. And at the same time, we can see that in the speeches of the president of Uzbekistan, different public officials, we can see more and more prioritization of South Asia in the kind of new revised or reconsidered foreign policy of Uzbekistan. And they're paying special attention to the construction of Trans-Afghan Transport Corridor, which will connect the regions of Central and South Asia. This speech is based on my recent publication, a couple of recent publications. and where I put kind of research questions about what are the prospects for building resilient order in Central and South Asia, which are linked to the achievement of peace in neighboring Afghanistan, and to what extent Afghanistan can play a central role in rebuilding the historic Silk Route to increase connectivity between Central and South Asia and resilient orders in this region. So the idea of connectivity between Central and South Asia is not completely new. So this is based on the history, on our historical relations and exchange with South Asia. So it goes back to 2000 years ago when the first kind of Silk Route was established, and it flourished until let's say 15th, 16th century. And that in this period, we had very close links and exchanges, cultural, people to people, economic, political, trade exchange between Central and South Asia. But after disruption of Silk Route in about 16th century until the recent decades, we had very limited exchange between the regions because of the change in world order and geopolitical landscape in this part of the world. Objectives of my talk to discuss a bit of regional security complex theory and how it's implemented in Central Asia. What is the historical role of Afghanistan in the integration between Central and South Asia? The current state of political and socio-economic relations in the West, in this vast space, and what are the existing opportunities and possibly problematic aspects of expanding this into regional cooperation using the territory of Afghanistan. First of all, I would like to draw your attention to the term of Central Asian region. So usually we use this term considering the 5 post-Soviet countries which emerged after the collapse of Soviet Union. So Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. So this is kind of political perception of the term of Central Asian region. But in reality, of course, the cultural and historical and economic Central Asia is much broader. So it goes beyond these 5 Central Asian countries. But this map of Central Asia is the most popular which exists, and where you can find this one or very similar ones in different websites and books. So this is a kind of established perception of Central Asian region. During the recent years, we should say that especially with this reconsideration of Uzbek foreign policy and its special attention to Afghanistan, to the processes in this country, to the peace process, so we can say that the notion of the Central Asian region is beginning to include Afghanistan because it has a geographic commonality with the region, the historical and cultural past influences the strategic balance of the entire region. So you cannot provide security to the region without Afghanistan. You cannot reach prosperity, sustainable development, and resilient order in Central Asia ignoring Afghanistan. So that's why Afghanistan is very important, not only in terms of security, but in terms of the future development and resilience in this part of the world. We should pay more attention to Afghanistan, and now we are even talking about considering Afghanistan as a part of Central Asian region. So it's of course there can be different views about to what extent this is positive or not very positive for the region to have Afghanistan on board. But this is we want it or no, this is the reality which comes from our history. So if you can try to ignore Afghanistan, but it will be still somewhere very close. So I think in these circumstances, it's better to be engaged with Afghanistan rather trying to build kind of restrictions to put barriers in order and for the sake of so-called security in Central Asia. So security in the region and prosperity cannot be reached without peace and stability in Afghanistan. That's why I think it's quite important for the region to support this country and try to overcome the difficulties which are still present in this country. So this map now kind of brings the more real perspective on Central Asian region rather than the one which I demonstrated you earlier, this one. So this is a kind of old perception of Central Asia. Now we are moving towards the new perception and new look of Central Asia, which possibly can include Afghanistan. But of course, it's not something which will happen quickly. And Afghanistan needs to go through very complicated route in order to be more integrated to Central Asian processes, to be integrated in different international regional institutions and mechanisms which exist in Central Asia. But still, if we have understanding already that Afghanistan should be considered as part of Central Asia, it's a good starting point for further collaboration and further involvement of Afghanistan and different regional processes in Central Asia. But what I could see in my research that traditional events in Afghanistan and the impact of this conflict in this country on regional security are usually explored using the concepts of the balance of interests, which are quite inherent in realist and near-realist theories. So usually many experts analyze Afghanistan from the perspective of military power. How many soldiers its army has, how it's prepared, and they also try to analyze the situation in the country from the perspective of rational choice. But I think the current situation in Afghanistan, the current developments in Afghanistan, and how quickly the previous government collapsed demonstrates that this approach is not the one which considers all aspects and all important features of Afghanistan. So the Western world had the perception that if Afghan army has 300,000 soldiers and it's equipped with the most advanced Western weaponry, it will be more than enough to prevent the collapse of the government quickly. But the reality demonstrates that despite having such vast number, huge number of military forces and which were equipped according to the highest international standards, this army could not resist to the Taliban pressure and quickly collapsed. So this again demonstrates that we need to think of more comprehensive series which can reflect the developments in Afghanistan, can explain the role and impact on the neighboring regions. So it's not just a realist approach, the role of power, military power, which is dominant in providing security and stability in this region. So we should always consider as many other aspects, like again, history, cultural specifics, the mentality of the region, of the people, and their perception of life, their perception of security. The Afghan people can define security in a completely different manner than it can be defined in other parts of the world. So we should always consider these issues while we're analyzing the developments in this country. So therefore, I think this kind of approach narrows the subject of the study, reducing it to certain aspects of Afghan conflict and its impact on Central Asia, and it cannot provide a full picture of what's happening in the country without considering the root causes of high concern of the countries of the region with the process in Afghanistan. So we are trying to be engaged with Afghanistan, not just because we need to promote our trade, we need to advance our export and to find new markets. So this is, again, this goes to this thinking of very rational thinking that we need to export, we need to make benefit. That's why we are kind of trying to be engaged with Afghanistan. We're investing in Afghanistan and building infrastructure there. I think the reason why we're so engaged is much more complicated, comprehensive, and deeper than this just rational thinking of gaining more benefits, economic benefits for Uzbekistan, and also security benefits. So the influence of the situation in Afghanistan on regional security in Central Asia, in my view, can be best explained using the theory of regional security complex, which were put forward by Barre-Buzan in 1983. So this concept was subsequently finalized with the participation of his colleague, Ole Wever, and acquired modern outlines. So initially, the definition of regional security complex was as follows: a group of states whose main security concerns connect them so closely that their national security cannot be considered in isolation from each other. So this was the foundational definition promoted in 1983. Then, with the support of Ole Wever, this definition was revised, and then they presented the new definition of regional security complex, which sounds as a set of units whose major processes of securitization, desecuritization, or they both are so interconnected that their security problems cannot reasonably be analyzed or resolved separately from each other. So if your security concerns, if some security concerns of neighboring countries are intrinsically linked to each other, and they are very dependent in terms of providing each other security, then we can see the establishment of regional security complexes. So now let's have a look on this map, which were again proposed by Buzan and Wever. So they considered the division of the world in different and several regional security complexes. Here you can see North American, South American regional security complex, East Asian regional security complex, South Asian regional security complex. But here you can see that Central Asia was considered as part of vast post-Soviet regional security complex. So it was not considered in something separate. It was considered within this broad and huge post-Soviet regional security complex. But they believe, the authors of this concept believe that there is a post-Soviet regional security complex which is centered around Russia. And the core of this complex is surely the Russian Federation, which links the subcomplexes of the Baltic region, which includes Latvia, Belarus, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and the Western group of countries, Belarus, Moldova, and Ukraine, and Central Asia, the 5 countries which I already mentioned, and the Caucasus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. So they divided this regional security complex in several subcomplexes. So they considered Central Asia as a weak subcomplex because internal dynamics of the region, in the view of the authors, were not formed enough, and the Russia's involvement was very strong. But we may criticize authors for this approach, but we should always be in the mind that this opinion, this analysis was expressed and at the end of 1990s. Of course, at that period, Central Asia has just gained independence and had many internal issues, were not strong enough, and so were very dependent on the role of external actors. Well, for that period, this this vision was, I think, very relevant to the existing circumstances. But now, of course, we're living, and 20 years after, more than 20 years after this conceptual framework, and of course, the current situation is much more different than the one we had at the end of 1990s. Again, this is a closer look on post-Soviet Great Power Regional Security Complex. You can see that again, Central Asia was considered as weak subcomplex. Yeah, that they considered Central Asia as a weak because the states have not yet fully taken place. The region is relatively open for penetration of external forces, so they consider the role of external forces in Central Asia. These also included several countries on the map. They pointed several countries on the world map as countries which do not belong to any regional security complex. They were convinced that the most often the borders between the regions are geographically defined by weak interaction zones, or insulators or isolators. They call them this way. So they considered the countries like Turkey, Burma, Afghanistan as weak interaction zones between the bordering regional security complexes, so which are turned in both directions, but not strong enough to unite these two regions into one whole. And the concept of an isolator is important for the theory of regional security complex, and it shouldn't be confused with the traditional buffer state, whose function is at the center of strong securitization system, not at its edge. So we are not talking about the role of Afghanistan just as a buffer between Central and South Asia. So it's more kind of isolated. So it's not trying to build border between the two regions, but it's the country itself is weak enough in order to prevent the connectivity between the neighboring regions. Afghanistan has always remained in the view of Buzan and Beva as isolated, that attracted its neighbors on all grounds, but at the same time kept them away from each other rather than uniting them. So it's definitely true for that period. We could see the involvement of different external actors, which also had very harmful effect on the internal development in Afghanistan. Due to the clash of interests between different external actors, country has faced to the conflict and the dominant process in the country was civil war between different political military groups which had no consensus and tried to overcome each other. But Central Asia has developed as a deeply integrated geopolitical space for many centuries. But not agreeing with Buzan and Weber, I can say that, of course, gradually we can say that Central Asia developed a separate, independent regional security complex. So Central Asia is completely different from the one in 1990s. It has been established, and it has developing economies, much better condition, armed forces, and more sustainable economies and trade relations with the outside world, and can promote the policies of multi-vector relations with different external actors, having kind of balance in their foreign policies. So these all features demonstrate that Central Asia could develop a separate regional security complex in this region. General historical, ethno-religious, economic, cultural ties, and geographical proximity predetermine the emergence of this complex. The countries of the region have significantly strengthened their political and economic independence, and now they could be viewed as a subcomplex of wider regional security complex, and not as a subcomplex as regional security complex and the Russian Federation. One of the reasons why I'm saying that Central Asia as a separate regional security complex, not because of internal developments and advancement of Central Asia in comparison with 1990s, but also to the fact that we have now very weak connections with the former, some of the former post-Soviet countries. So if you remember the major points, major features of regional security complex, you should have common security threats in order to form regional security complex. So if we again talk about post-Soviet regional security complex, it means Uzbekistan or Central Asia has very strong security threat perception as the Baltic states or Western group countries and this post-Soviet regional security complex. But in reality, we can say that we have very limited common security threats with, for example, with Baltic states or with from Western group countries. Let's say instability in Moldova has very limited impact on Central Asia, or government change in this country has almost no effect on Central Asia. But at the same time, and changes in Afghanistan, for example, the ones which are happening now in this country have direct impact on regional security rather than developments in Ukraine or Moldova. Of course, these countries, the developments and the internal processes in Ukraine and Moldova can have some influence on the region, on Central Asia, but it cannot be compared with comprehensive influence of developments, let's say, in Afghanistan or other neighboring countries. Therefore, I think these linkages, security linkages, trade linkages are now much weaker with some of the post-Soviet countries, and we cannot say that this post-Soviet regional security complex still exists because of the lack of relations and exchange between these regions of post-Soviet space. Even the connection to this Caucasian subcomplex is not so pronounced. So the one which is very close to Central Asia, that only Caspian Sea divides this Central Asian Caucasus, but as only two countries in Central Asia has access to Caspian Sea, Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan, so they can feel some linkages to South Caucasus in terms of security, while the countries like Kyrgyzstan or Tajikistan has almost no influence, very limited influence from the developments in Caucasus. What you can say, what about the role of Russia? How we can say that there is no more post-Soviet regional security complex, while we can see this very comprehensive and very active role of Russia in Central Asia, still active role of Russia in Central Asia. This can be explained with the fact that Russia's continued significant participation and Central Asian security processes can be explained by its status as a great power. In accordance with the theory of regional security complex, such great powers do not obey or restrict themselves with the factors of geography and neighborhood and security matters. So their status allows them to be presented or to penetrate and read different security processes in any part of the world. So this is the explanation to the fact that Russia is still important and very active actor in Central Asia. And if we compare 1990s, at that period, Russia was still the main external actor, the dominant player in the region. Nowadays, this role is balanced by, let's say, by China, to more or less balanced by China, United States, Japan, Republic of Korea, EU, Iran, Turkey, and many other countries. They're all present in Central Asia. They all have their own interests, and this, the presence of variety of external actors, important external actors, creates the opportunity for the region to have balanced relations with them and to avoid any kind of dominance of any external actor. So it's in favor of Central Asian countries. The other features which demonstrate the formation of independent regional security complex in Central Asia, we have common borders in the region, yeah, which are determined by state borders of the countries of Central Asia. We have kind of an archaic structure. These are the features of regional security complex which were developed by Busan and Weber. So they consider that if all these features are met by some regions, so then we can say that they have separate or independent regional security complex. So the second feature, an anarchic structure, which means the region, in order to be called a regional security complex, should have, of course, at least 2 or more autonomous units, which means states. Of course, Central Asia has 5 members, and it's more than enough to be considered as a regional security complex. And we also have some polarity within the region. So we don't have a balanced and at the same level developments in the region. Some countries have a slightly bigger economic potential, demographic and territorial factors, and they also possess significant resource of natural resources, which give them an opportunity to invest more in their economies and to have a higher and richer economies, the countries like Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. Turkmenistan, despite having huge energy resources, have quite limited demographic potential. Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, they're having smaller number of populations, the limited nature of natural resources, and the complex mountainous landscape are just entering the path of sustainable development. We also have social constructions that encompasses the amity and enmity between the countries. And in the region, it's not easy to clearly distinguish between the models of friendliness and enmity. There are no institutionalized region-wide mechanisms. We have only consultative meetings of presidents of regional countries. The last of such meetings happened just recently in Turkmenistan. We also have International Fund for Saving Aral Sea and also Interstate Commission for Water Coordination. But if you compare these regional mechanisms with the existing issues in the region, of course, these are they are not enough at all. We need more regional institutions in order to respond to the common challenges and to try to build a more sustainable future for the whole Central Asian countries. And if you pay attention to the conceptual foreign policy documents, strategic foreign policy documents, or speeches of the region of the leaders of the Central Asian countries, you can see that all these documents mention and note the special role of neighboring countries, neighboring regional states in their foreign policy. Though they emphasize that the priorities, one of the most important priorities for their foreign policies is Central Asia. You can see this in all conceptual foreign policy documents of Central Asian countries, of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. We can say, what about Afghanistan? So how it is, what about its role in Central Asian security? So Afghanistan was always, for many decades, was considered as a securitized problem for Central Asian countries. So it was securitized, to securitize in high degree of problems, we can attribute terrorism, religious extremism, the fair and rational use of water resources of the region, and conflict in Afghanistan, and possibly to less extent energy and transport problems in Central Asia. So Afghanistan was always one of the central elements of security problems of all Central Asian countries. Again, if you look into the speeches of leaders of Central Asian countries or their official documents devoted to their foreign policies, you can always see that they mention Afghanistan as a security problem, as a source of threats and challenges for Central Asia. So for decades, Afghanistan was securitized to a very high level in Central Asia. But I should say that at the same time, possibly we are missing to securitize other issues which are not less important to the region as Afghanistan. Let's say economic and technological backwardness from the advanced economy of the world, Central Asian economic backwardness can be considered, in my view, should be considered as a security problem. It's not just about economy and sustainable development. Our future, our prosperity depend on this. So this should be considered as a factor of our national security or regional security in Central Asia. What about the problems, ecological problems, which are quite widespread in Central Asia? They also, with the exception of water resources issues, the other ecological problems were mostly out of this picture of priorities of Central Asian countries. So I think we should again have a look on ecological problems as something which is very important as a security issue for our future. And this is again about the securitization of Afghanistan. The many all leaders of regional countries argued often that the conflict in Afghanistan has negative impact on virtually all political and economic processes, and its main destabilizing factor for the region. And Afghanistan has been seen as a threat to regional security, not only by leaders, but also the political establishment, the expert community, but also the entire region. So there are many surveys which demonstrate that people perceived Afghanistan, even ordinary people in regional countries, perceived Afghanistan as a source of threats. So they were very careful in any engagement with this country and tried to build barriers in order to protect their borders and to protect their securities. But what kind of transformation happened in Uzbek foreign policy in the recent years that we decided to leave this securitized approach to Afghanistan and try to build new vision on Afghanistan. So now Uzbekistan is perceiving Afghanistan not as a threat, rather than an opportunity for sustainable development of the whole region. And also, we are now looking on Afghanistan as a bridge which can potentially connect us with South Asia. And in this context, Afghanistan's, in the context of historical development, changed the format of interaction with Central Asia under the influence of emerging realities, but it was always engaged. There can be some slight shifts on the maps, on the states which were established on these territories and the history, but always it kept its linkage and its relations with Central Asia. And to some extent, we can go beyond this saying and also declare that Afghanistan was part of the one region at that period, was Central Asian region. And again, if we look back to the history during the period of Greco-Bactrian kingdom, the Kushan Empire, the Ghaznavids, Timurids, and Baburids, Afghanistan was part of huge regional security complex which stretched from the northern regions of modern Kazakhstan, which was called Golden Horde at that period, to the coastal regions of modern India. So you can imagine how vast region this security complex covered, especially after Babur's campaign in India and the foundation of Baburid state. A new geopolitical and geoeconomic space was actually formed in this country, combining the modern territories of Central and South Asian regions. Due to the origin of Baburids from Central Asia, they contributed to the active expansion of political, trade, economic, cultural, and humanitarian exchange between Central and South Asia. And of course, in this context, Afghanistan played central role and of connecting bridge between this renewed space. So let's have a look on several maps which demonstrate historical proximity of Central Asia and Afghanistan. So this is a map of Ghaznavid Empire. You can see that it covered many territories of the current Central Asian countries, and also the whole territory going beyond Pakistan, Iran. The territories were controlled by this Ghaznavid Empire. Again, Afghanistan and Central Asia was part of the United Territory or state at that period. This is the map of Kharazmid Empire. Again, most part of Afghanistan was included in the territory and the state of Kharazmid, and it developed in close linkages with Central Asia. This is Timurid dynasty's map. Again, the same. You can see that these territories were part of the United Regional Security Complex. This is the map of Mughal Empire. Again, Afghanistan played a role of connection between South Asia and the states which existed on the current territories of Central Asian region at that period. You can see that it was Babur's domain until 1525, and after his move to India, so that it kept its important role of connecting bridge between Central and South Asia. The role of insulator Afghanistan started to play as a result of agreements between Russian Empire and Great Britain somewhere in 1885, 1895, 1807. So there were three documents which were signed by Russian Empire and Great Britain on the delimitation of spheres of influence and establishment of kind of buffer zone in Afghan territory. You probably know that they even extended Afghanistan and created a border between Afghanistan and China by including Wakhan corridor to the territory of Afghanistan, just to keep the territories controlled by Great Britain and Russian Empire from each other using the Afghan territory. And internal conflict in Afghanistan in 1990s, collapse of Najibullah regime, and the further development of civil war in the country, which ended up with the establishment of Taliban, the government led by Taliban in 1996, was perceived as a potential threat to the security of Central Asia. And Afghanistan has become a source of security threats and determining factor of regional security complexes both in Central and South Asia. So both regions complained a lot about developments in Afghanistan and how they are negatively influencing on their securities. But what is difficult to explain from the perspective of regional security complex, that Afghanistan has kind of internal division. So northern parts of Afghanistan are intrinsically linked to Central Asia. So they have very close relations with Central Asian countries, a lot of exchange, and there are some also ethnic proximities. Many Uzbeks, Tajiks, and Turkmens live in northern provinces of Afghanistan, which of course creates much better understanding, at least in terms of, let's say, language. You don't need any interpretation, and you can have a direct communication, which also is important in establishing links between different communities and states. While the southern regions of Afghanistan, let's say the provinces of Kandahar, are very linked to the developments in Pakistan, that they have very close exchange with Pakistan. So they have very important linkages to this country. And the reality of Afghanistan that now the provinces, Afghan provinces, are poorly linked to each other, but are very well linked, in a very advanced manner. They are linked to the neighboring regions. It's not just about Central Asia or South Asia, or let's say the provinces of Afghanistan like Herat or Nimruz have much comprehensive links to Iran and are very dependent on Iran rather than from their links and exchanges from other Afghan provinces. So this is very important to know while we're analyzing the current situation in this country. So that's why I think we should, sorry, I got, sorry. Yeah, we should have a look on this map, which clearly demonstrate this internal division within Afghanistan. So you can see this high Hindu Kush mountains, very high Hindu Kush mountains, reaching 7,000 meters in some peaks in Afghanistan. And these mountains are going just somewhere in the central part of Afghanistan, therefore dividing geographically northern regions from southern ones. So, and even infrastructure links between the north and south are very limited if you compare the links with, let's say, northern provinces links with Central Asian countries, or again, the southern provinces links with Iran or Pakistan. So for example, Mazar Sharif is connected with Kabul with only one tunnel in this mountainous region, Salang Tunnel, which has strategic importance, but considering the fact that it is unique, it's the only tunnel in this country linking Mazar Sharif and Kabul. It's of course it's very fragile. Any force which tries to disrupt the links between these countries and central provinces of Afghanistan with the northern ones can easily take control over this tunnel and disrupt connection between this region. Again, the same, the very similar map demonstrating the role of this geographic specifics of Afghanistan in its current developments. The opinions which I mentioned already, that provinces, northern provinces of Faryab, Jozjan, Balkh, Kunduz, Takhar, Badakhshan, which share borders with Central Asian states, as a determining factor in the perception of threats for Afghanistan by regional countries. So these provinces, which are on the north, they are very important and interesting to Central Asian countries, while the provinces on the south does not have such high importance and role for Central Asian countries, and vice versa. So that's why Afghanistan is kind of unique. Yeah, it has its internal division, makes connectivity between Central Asia and South Asia is complicated. But considering these issues, that now the regions of Afghanistan are more linked to neighboring countries rather than having internal exchanges and internal relations, I think the development of trans-Afghan infrastructure projects like the railway from Mazar Sharif to Kabul and further to Peshawar, the more such infrastructure projects which will help to not just to link Central Asia with South Asia, but also very important to link the north of Afghanistan with its south, and creating by these new opportunities and new linkages between the countries could be very beneficial to Afghanistan. Or the electricity power supply lines going from Central Asia further to Pakistan or other South Asian countries can be important again in terms of connectivity even within Afghanistan. So what kind of opportunities we can see with the development of relations between Central and South Asia, where Afghanistan can play a very important role. Afghanistan, which previously served an isolated role, is gradually becoming the center of new macro region connecting Central and South Asia. The uniqueness of Afghanistan lies in the fact that it can reformat the lines of demarcation between Central and South Asia, which and passing inside its territory. So it's not on the borders of Afghanistan where interaction between Central and South Asia stops. So it is more internal division. So this mountainous range of Hindu Kush, which prevents the more comprehensive and deeper relations between Central and South Asian region. And so Afghanistan can help to reformat these lines of demarcation into the border of good neighborliness, mutual understanding, trust, and versatile progress. Then implementation of infrastructure projects uniting the divided province of Afghanistan will also result in increased interaction between the regions of Central and South Asia. On the other hand, the implementation of large-scale economic projects can stimulate the emergence of new jobs creation in Afghanistan, generation of state budget revenues, and to ensure and service chains to ensure the efficient operation of roads and railways. So this is the plan which Uzbekistan and other Central Asian countries are now trying to advance in Afghanistan to promote more infrastructure projects and to support sustainable development and recovery of this country. Why it's so important for Central Asia to be linked with South Asia? If we go now from this historical, cultural importance of these links to the more kind of economic aspects of this issue, we can say that Central Asia countries, being mostly export-oriented economic models, having export-oriented models of economic development, are in dire need of new markets for their goods and services which are produced in the region. And if in the last century, mainly considering our common space, main distribution markets for Central Asia have been the post-Soviet space. But along with some positive results, such a one-sided development of export opportunities, narrow the region's chance in choosing the most optimal sales markets. Let's compare the number of population. So this post-Soviet space generated, so it increased its number of population. If you compare the periods of 1989 and 2019, there were only 4 and 4.2% rise in the number of population. So if in 1989 we had 285 million people and living in this space, now we have less than 300 million people. So the rise is quite limited if you compare this huge period of 30 years. But at the same time, the main countries to this growth was made, the main contribution to this growth was made by the countries of Central Asia and Azerbaijan, while the rest of post-Soviet countries, we can see still there is a steady decline in the number of population, and the best was a very optimistic evaluation. In the best optimistic evaluation, the number of population can even decline in the future. So it's expected that it may decrease by 2050 to 284 million people and be less than the population of one country like Nigeria. And of course, in this slide, the population of South Asia of almost 2 billion people, high rates of economic development, and the presence of such leading regional powers as India and Pakistan in this part of the world make the region an attractive partner for the whole Central Asia. It's expected that the full implementation of the railway Mazar Sharif, Kabul, Peshawar for transporting goods from Pakistan to Uzbekistan will have to spend, if we can manage to finish this railway project, it will help us to decrease the number of days which is needed to transport goods from Pakistan to Uzbekistan from 35 days to just 3 to 5 days. So you can see how a substantial decrease in the period needed for the transit will give us this connectivity. But of course, the picture is not very bright. It's not only bright, let's say this way. The connectivity between the idea of connectivity between Central and South Asia is facing many difficulties. The most important one, of course, the current instability in Afghanistan. Yes, the quick collapse of the previous government and the new, then the takeover of Taliban is an important development for Central Asia. But it created instability and uncertainty in the region. So, and of course, it aggravates the implementation of any projects, because even before the projects which were implemented in Afghanistan had very high risks. But now, in the circumstances when you don't have a proper government in Kabul, and you don't know with whom you should talk to discuss such projects and their implementation, and which is more important, the security guarantees for such projects, it's very difficult to talk about implementation of any large-scale projects, because the risks are now much higher. But if Taliban could take the control of the country fully and establish its government and have enough control over different territories of Afghanistan, maybe it can be to some extent positive development in the terms of for Central Asia, in terms of now the region will have a united power in Afghanistan whom it can talk with to discuss infrastructure projects, to promote them, and to get some guarantees. Because before, it was quite complicated procedure. In order to implement something in Afghanistan, you need to get approval and cooperation from the government in Kabul. You needed to work with Taliban again to be sure that Taliban is happy with such infrastructure projects and is not going to present any security threats to its implementation. But at the same time, some local power authorities, power laws, which control some specific local communities in Afghanistan, but without engagement of whom you cannot again guarantee the security of your project. So it was quite complicated and long procedure. But if Taliban could take the full responsibility and control over the Afghan territory, maybe it can be in favor of Central Asian countries in terms of having a proper partner in this country to discuss with different projects and to advance them. Second difficulty is the existing disagreements between the governments of Afghanistan and Pakistan can seriously aggravate the creation of connecting bridge between Central and South Asia. Possibly, if we see the dominant role of Taliban in the next Afghan government, of course, these issues of cooperation with Pakistan can improve, because we all know about the links, about the relations between Pakistan and Taliban movement. So this can have a positive effect on the improvement of relation between the countries. But we can do very little with existing mistrust and hostility in relation between New Delhi and Islamabad, which is also projected on the relations of the countries around the settlement of Afghan conflict. And the promoted plans for the economic recovery of the country and the construction of large infrastructure facilities on its territory do not always include the equal role of India and Pakistan. So these countries conduct very separate, non-uncoordinated policies. And of course, if we want to connect Central and South Asia, we need more engagement and more commitment from all the countries of the region. So it's not enough just to have Pakistan on board of this concept. It's very important to have broad engagement of India in these processes. Finally, the potential adverse reaction of Russia to the active position of Central Asian countries in establishing close cooperation and creating some kind of alternative to the northern transport corridor. So because through Russian territory and Afghanistan, using Afghanistan and creating southern road requires more careful and detailed analysis, because until now, Central Asian countries are quite dependent from the northern route crossing Kazakhstan and Russia and going to Baltic state and further to other European countries. And the development of alternative transport corridors can have negative impact on the load and the capacity of the northern routes to Russia, and of course may not be in the interest of this country. And this is important not just from economic perspective, but it's also an important mechanism from political perspective, and it gives Moscow an additional role and leverage in its relation with Central Asian countries. And as this importance of Moscow for regional countries may decrease slightly and contribute, but the creation of southern route to Afghanistan linking Central and South Asia may be positive for Central Asian region, because it can contribute to the maintenance of a more balanced and multi-vector foreign policy posed by Central Asian countries, avoiding dominance of any only external actor in this part of the world. So let me give a brief conclusion for my speech. The prospects for sustainable development in Central Asia and South Asia linked to the achievement, closely linked to the achievement of peace in neighboring Afghanistan. Stable, predictable, dynamic Afghanistan can become an important bridge between Central and South Asia, as well as key player in rebuilding the historic Silk Road and considering the modern circumstances, of course. At the same time, it's important to realistically assess capabilities of Central and South Asian states in resolving Afghan conflict, to show a long-term commitment to establishing peace in this country and building comprehensive inter-regional cooperation. The presence of many serious problems hindering the development of contacts between Central and South Asia confirm the need to travel the thorny path to integrate the two regions and to work out non-standard solutions to establish a compromise peace in Afghanistan. Especially the current situation in this country is very important as a kind of turning point in our links with South Asia. If again the current power in Afghanistan can establish a proper government, a stable government, and it will be more or less inclusive, so it would not be only dominant by Taliban, but will also involve are the important political players in this country. So it can create more sustainable government. And this government may play a crucial role in promoting this connectivity between Central and South Asia. So these regions are fully ready for this connectivity. They are very supportive of this idea, but considering the situation in Afghanistan, which is strategic player in this connectivity, this concept has been facing some difficulties. So therefore, Afghanistan can be very important and crucial partner in building this connectivity, and hopefully, the peace and stability will be established in this country, and we can see the prosperity and development of this country, which is very important and which is in very favor of both Central and South Asian countries. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Akram, for the very insightful lecture on Central Asia and South Asia. Of course, you've stressed on the importance of regional connectivity, again, the challenges and definitely the potential opportunities, all right? So from the very historical and the cultural coverage of the lecture and all the way to the very recent in terms of the economic aspects of the way forward. And like you said, that more countries in the region, very important, just not to one, but of course, engagements with those countries. So, and we all know what's today with Afghanistan, and as you have shared with us, and I'm very sure we all stay put, and we hope, you know, Afghanistan will be a country that will be recognized and can play its role in the region, and of course, eventually achieve what has actually been planned with all the neighbors. So with that, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we shall now open for Q&A, and we would like to see if there are questions in our pigeonhole, please. And Dr. Akram, you will see the questions also, all right? And we can pick the questions once it's out on the screen. Okay.
I can see now the one question from Najma Zarifa Hanafia, yeah?
Okay, it's coming out. Yeah, there are more questions here. All right. Okay, go ahead.
How will the historical Silk Road be affected with what's happening in Afghanistan? Of course, as I mentioned, it's a huge challenge for the concept of Central South Asia connectivity. What's going on in Afghanistan is a huge challenge for this concept of linking these regions. And the most kind of important part of this challenge that we are now facing a huge uncertainty in Afghanistan. So we could see the collapse of the previous government, but we are now already living, and I think today is the 10th days of Taliban takeover in Kabul, but we still cannot see any government or officials from the Taliban side appointed to this position. This can be a demonstration of the fact that even Taliban didn't expect such quick takeover of in Afghanistan, and now they are kind of conducting negotiations with other political actors in Afghanistan. And also there is still small but important resistance from Panjshir province of this country. So all these issues again are increasing uncertainty in this country. What I've heard that they only appointed one minister for culture and information. It's a former press service, the head of their former press service, and I haven't heard any other appointees to the different ministerial positions. So this is also a very not very positive sign of what's happening in this country, and not very positive sign for the connectivity between Central and South Asia. But if they can quickly solve this situation, and if they can find some compromise with other political actors in Afghanistan and create what I've mentioned, inclusive government, then this can be a very positive development for the idea of reviving this historical Silk Road, which now we call as a connectivity between Central and South Asia. Because again, before, the problem was in the fact that we had kind of status quo. What kind of status quo? Though we had several powerful groups which couldn't um, defeat each other, and it was endless conflict between these sides. But as soon as now we have more or less one dominant power which is trying to involve other players in its camp, possibly this can be again some positive development in terms of having to break this status quo and having one partner whom we can talk with and to solve all kind of daily basis problems on the connectivity between Central and South Asia.
All right. Thank you. I think we can move on to the next question.
So I think the first part I've already mentioned, how it's affecting connectivity. Let's focus on what Uzbekistan government do about it. So again, Uzbekistan being a neighbor of Afghanistan, and not just because of the fact of neighborhood, but also considering the fact that Uzbekistan is one of the unique countries in this region who have invested substantially in this country. I mean, not just in terms of financial investment, economic investments. They invested politically, economically, and culturally to our relations with this country in recent years. We established close links with both Ghani government, with Taliban movement, with other political figures in this country, with the society and local communities of Afghanistan. So the relations of Uzbekistan with Afghanistan is very comprehensive. It includes many different spheres. And of course, this now there's uncertainty in the country, in Afghanistan, creates disruptions to these connections. And of course, Uzbekistan is very interested to continue these links. And therefore, despite this uncertainty, Uzbekistan is now open its border, and it allows trade flows to continue their work. And the people who have necessary documents, visas to travel to Uzbekistan or to use its territory as a transit, they also are allowed to enter this country. And also we allowed to some small number of Afghan refugees to be hosted in Uzbekistan, and what is even more important now, Uzbekistan is working closely in cooperation with different Western countries and other members of international community in order to provide smooth and quick evacuation of Afghan citizens who are trying to leave the country. So you probably know that Uzbekistan is now allowed to have access to its civilian airports in Tashkent, in Bukhara, in Navai, in order to provide space for these different European countries to establish here some transit hubs to bring people on the military aircrafts from Kabul, quickly check them here on the Uzbek territory, and then transit them further to the European countries using civilian aircrafts. And it makes the process much quicker and much efficient than it was in the first days of this evacuation plan, where you could, the whole world could see how these miserable videos and very dramatic videos, I would say, from Kabul airport. So this is very important that Uzbekistan is trying to make this process much quicker and much efficient by providing access to its civilian airports. But we are not talking about hosting these people on Uzbek territory. This is more kind of a space to bring them here, because these aircraft then can quickly leave them and go back to Kabul to bring the new part of the refugees. So therefore, it's important, I think, contribution. But of course, Uzbekistan is ready to continue its political and cultural and other interactions with Afghanistan, but it's more dependent on the formation of new government in order to have counterpart to discuss these issues.
That's right. Yeah. Very great. Okay, I think we can move on to the next question. Yeah. Najma, wanting to know more about tourism part in Uzbekistan. What about the culture and tourism friendly? And everybody knows Uzbekistan with, with its Muslim tourism and so forth. So,
Yeah.
so what about
Thanks
that?
a lot.
Safety, yeah. Is it not threatened by neighborhood countries?
Okay. Let me share briefly some my views on this question. Of course, it's not very much within our topic, but still, I think it's very important and somehow linked to what I've mentioned before. So before 2016, Uzbekistan was quite closed country. Despite having a huge tourism potential, it was quite close. That visitors to Uzbekistan had some difficulties in obtaining visa, obtaining access, having convenient air flights to the country. Limited number of air flights were presented to visit the country. But of course, in recent years, we of course substantially changed this sphere. So now Uzbekistan is visa-free country for almost 100 states in the world. And even for the rest of the world, the visa obtaining process is electronic and it's very quick. You need just to apply on a special website for very small fee of, I think, $20, and you could quickly get your visa in a very few days, 3-4 days period, at maximum, even quicker. And now we can see a huge development of tourism infrastructure, many new hotels, new infrastructure, airports were rebuilt and were reconstructed. And the safety is a top priority for our government. And especially if you consider to take into, if you take into account the fact that we are located in the region which is kind of bordered with such conflict zones as Afghanistan, despite the fact Uzbekistan, according to many international ratings and rankings, are considered among the safest countries in the world. And this is something which I think we are ready to sustain in the future. And so all tourists are warmly welcome. And the tourism development sector didn't stop even during the pandemic, despite the fact that the tourism sphere was hardly hit by the pandemic. Uzbekistan continued to give subsidies to the people who would like to build new hotels and who would like to develop infrastructure in this sphere. And I think this was important contribution in order for further revival of this industry in post-pandemic period.
Yeah, right. And like I said earlier about Uzbekistan, just a 7-hour short flight already to Tashkent.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a question about what about the employment rates in Uzbekistan? The employment affected by this issue in general?
We have unemployment issue with unemployment, especially among the youth, and this is one of the highest concerns of the government. Try to address this issue because of this quite quick demographic rise in Uzbekistan. Our economy is laying behind this demographic rise in our country. So the number of job places which economy is creating is not enough to cover the number of people which are kind of raising in Uzbekistan. So there are several ways to respond to this issue now in Uzbekistan. First of all, of course, to provide to to provide a quicker development of economy and create more industrial factories which can provide jobs and employment for a huge number of people. The second way is to provide new educational opportunities then. So the number of, let's say, higher educational institutions doubled or more than doubled after 2016. There were about 70 higher education institutions before the 2016. Now there are more than 130 different higher education institutions, and a lot of the branches of a lot of international universities were open in Tashkent. So by providing better access to education, to increase the access to labor market and not limit these labor markets within the territory of Uzbekistan, to having access to broader regional and global employment markets. And finally, as due to this unemployment issue in Uzbekistan, we see a lot of migration, labor migration from Uzbekistan, and now the government is trying to make this process more smooth, legal, and protected for the people who prefer labor migration. So that therefore the special agency for labor migration was established. Their branches and the offices were open in most countries which are facing now labor migration from Uzbekistan, like Russia, Kazakhstan, South Korea, where the agency has its branches. And therefore they're trying to make this process smooth and protected for the people from Uzbekistan. Not a very unofficial way, which was dominant before, and without any legal guarantees for these people. And therefore we had many victims of such inappropriate situations before. Now we're trying to improve the situation.
Well, great. Yeah, I think we can move on. A few more questions. I'm very surprised today. Very interesting topic. Yeah. So, well, with the pandemic and not sure how long will it affect Uzbekistan's efforts in the development for business and economy in the region?
Thanks a lot. I think these questions are more relevant if would be even more relevant if our ambassador would be here. I feel myself like a kind of representative of our government, but I would like to assure you that this is not right understanding of my role. So of course I will respond to this question, but I would like to underline that this is more kind of my personal reflections and perception of the situation.
Yeah.
Of course, a pandemic hit Uzbekistan as it hit many other countries in the world. We saw the economic slowdown in the country. We could see the negative development in the sectors like which I mentioned in tourism sector, in services sector, and the unemployment rates slightly increased. Of course, and the poverty rate also, it was affected by the pandemic in Uzbekistan. But of course, as many other governments in the world, Uzbekistani government is trying to respond to these challenges by introducing special strategies and concepts on how to overcome these difficulties, and quickly transformed its governmental structure. So in order to respond to these issues, recently Uzbekistan has established agency for strategic planning under the Minister of Trade and Investment. So the main idea of this agency is to use the experience of it, at least in my understanding, how I understood and how I perceived this establishment of this agency, is to use the experience of the countries like Malaysia, South Korea, or Japan, which are considered as a tiger economies of East Asian region, which could quickly develop their economies by establishing some special agencies for such strategic economic development, which united in itself a lot of duties and a lot of responsibility, and could quickly develop and deliver important changes to their economies in order to build more sustainable and prosperous one. So I think these are all important developments in order to respond this post-pandemic challenges to Uzbek economy. And I hope that we will be successful. Of course, we are also relying on the support of international partners. Uzbekistan is closely cooperating with international institutions like the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Islamic Bank for Development, in order to develop some recovery programs and strategies for different sectors. I think this will be helpful in defining new priorities and strategies for further development.
All right, great. I think we move on to questions that will be right. Yeah. So this is interesting here. Can you see the whole question there? Will Uzbekistan be interested to invest in cryptocurrency infrastructure, mining like El Salvador, and do you think it'll be accepted in Central Asia? Wow.
Yeah, great question. For now, what I know, if I'm not mistaken, cryptocurrency is not legal still in Uzbekistan, but there were several discussions, even on a presidential level, in order to introduce these blockchain technologies and innovations in Uzbek economy. And this were given as a duty to one of the Uzbek agencies for national projects, project management. They have a special division on blockchain technologies, and now Ministry for Information and Communication Technologies is also a special branch, special department on these issues. So I think this is something which is considered by Uzbek government and which is Uzbek government is trying to develop. And mining industries has a substantial importance for Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is have huge mines of gold and copper and silver, and quickly developing them. I'm not sure to what extent Uzbekistan is ready to invest the mining industry of El Salvador. I think it's more relevant to the question to Uzbek government. But as a citizen and the person who lives in Tashkent, I haven't ever heard about any kind of links of Uzbekistan with Central American countries. And I don't think that in a near future we are going to develop some kind of comprehensive economic relation with this part of the world due to the obvious reasons of geographic distance, very low interaction, exchange. So I don't think we will be somehow engaged in the economy of El Salvador. But development of mining industry and new financial technologies, innovation in Uzbekistan is priority. We also established a special Minister of Innovation, Innovative Development in Uzbekistan, which is responsible for such kind of new issues in our economy and policy decisions. Thanks a lot.
All right. Yeah, that's from a foundation study student, Mohammad Fazli. Okay. Right. Now, what is Uzbekistan's government stand on the change of government in Afghanistan?
To some extent, again, I have covered this issue in my previous responses and in my let's say lecture. But if I can add, I would say just that Uzbekistan is ready to accept and to work with any government which is supported by Afghan people. Of maybe from my perspective as an expert, Taliban may not be the best partner, or may not be the most kind of pleasant partner, but if they are supported and if they kind of have a full scale support from different political parties in Afghanistan, then Uzbekistan is more than fine to work, to cooperate with this movement. And it's not completely new for Uzbekistan. We had relations with Taliban movement, operational relations, again, because they control this country. We had no official diplomatic relations, but again, in order to provide security for our border regions, to have some kind of exchange, we had operational links and relations with Taliban. And let's say the current Uzbek minister is one of the rare people in the world who had in-person meeting with Mullah Omar in back to 1990s. And the Taliban movement also visited Tashkent in 2018. Our officials met with their representatives in Doha several times. So I think Taliban is not something unacceptable for Uzbekistan. I think Uzbekistan is, and a good sign of this, that the fact that Uzbekistan haven't removed or haven't evacuated its diplomatic missions in Afghanistan after this regime collapse, Ghani regime collapse recently. The missions in Kabul and Mazar-e-Sharif are continuing their work. And this is, I think, also very symbolic to the fact that we are ready to work with any Afghan government which is supported and by Afghan community and which is ready to cooperate with Central Asia.
Right. Well, great. Thank you. All right. So we'll move on to a few more questions. Right. Okay. And I think this one, just pretty much we have covered.
Yes.
Or, yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Umarov, for enlightening us on the situation in the region. So the question is, how will the withdrawal of the U.S. troops leaving Afghanistan change the development and transformation efforts in the region?
Okay, again, I think some part of the question I have already covered, but let me maybe elaborate a little bit more on possible challenges for the region from the current developments in the country. One I've already mentioned, this the possible disruption of Central South Asia connectivity concept. The second, Taliban movement, despite trying to demonstrate kind of new phase, trying to make some lessons from its previous governance, is trying to change itself, but still in the essence, it's still a fundamentalist religious organization with extremist views, which have used quite often some terrorist mechanisms in order to reach its political objectives. And the fact that such movement came to the power can be viewed by some terrorist organizations which are still existent in Central Asia as a kind of model for following.
Mm-hmm.
So the problems of religious extremism and terrorism are still important for Central Asia, and such development in Afghanistan can be again can be viewed as a model, as a motivation for such organization. But of course, again, it depends. Many things depend on how Taliban can manage such perception and such vision from the outside. Now, Taliban is trying to demonstrate some new features of its governance, declaring, let's say, one of the new things, Taliban is officially declaring that it would like to provide the rights and freedoms for women, not to prevent them from getting education, from employment. So this is a kind of new development, but this is still a declaration. We should wait for a while and to follow the situation in the country in order to observe and analyze to what extent it has been realistically implemented on the ground.
Right.
The second challenge, that the vast amount of weaponry was left in the country without any control. So the quick withdrawal, I would say even not withdrawal, it's a more evacuation. Withdrawal would be gradually and in a planned manner. But what's happening now is more kind of urgent evacuation. And this urgent evacuation dictated the Western troops, some private security companies or military companies to leave all their weapons without any control on their bases. Even Afghan army left many of their military camps without any control, leaving all weaponry which they had. So now there is quite a high an alarming question of where is this weaponry, who is controlling it, and what fate it will have. So this is very important for the region. If this weaponry is going to be uncontrolled and it will be transferred to the hands of some terrorist, religious extremist organizations, so it can have a very negative impact on the region. And finally, again, I mentioned that Uzbekistan and other Central Asian countries invested a lot in many aspects to their relations with Afghanistan, and we should avoid the disruption of these relations, which can be harmful for both sides.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you for that answer. Okay, we move on. Maybe last 3 questions. Yeah. So the question on the pandemic, right? So how does the pandemic contribute to the connectivity within the region, or is the pandemic a blessing, or is it a disguise, or a blessing in disguise, or a culprit in this process? So pulling factors, what's the role of the pandemic there?
Thanks a lot for the question. Again, from one side, we can say that, of course, pandemic created a new barriers and risks for the implementation of different connectivity projects due to the healthcare measures, lockdowns, which happen in many countries. It, of course, slowed down many important processes. And also it affected the economic slowdown of countries, again, like Uzbekistan and Pakistan, making investments, huge investments in infrastructure projects, quite limited the possibility of large investments. Because now we need to revive our economies in order to have something to export. If you have very limited number of goods and services to export, there is no sense to build a road to South Asia. So it's very important to quickly revive our economies. But from the other side, if again we come from this historical background and from historical perspective, each crisis which happened in the history of humankind, while creating problems, at the same time created new opportunities, and was kind of a turning point for new developments, for some innovations. So hopefully this pandemic will push some new thinking, innovative thinking to this connectivity projects, will also help to make this process much quicker and much smooth. So I have such positive expectation as well.
All right. So it's a blessing in disguise for future works. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Wow, what a question here. Can this country be divided into different states?
Yeah, there is a lot of discussion on this issue among different scholars, experts, even politicians. And the very widespread version that Afghanistan needs to be divided between North and South. And as I mentioned in my presentation, because of these geographic factors, historical factors, ethnical factors. But I think that the solution is not in the division of the country. Just the division for the sake of the division will not bring anything. So I think we should listen. We should make lessons from the experience which we had during the last 20 years. So we had an idea that the Western world can build a new democracy, a new government, a new state in this country, which unfortunately was not reached in the reality. So trying to bring some new recipes from the outside to the country, I don't think also will bring something successful, some successful and beneficial development for the country. So again, we should try to have more supportive role in peace process in Afghanistan. Try to push the political groups in Afghanistan to have negotiations and to have their internal agreement how they should develop. If they come to the agreement that they need to divide the country, then okay. So this is their decision, which finds some support in Afghan society. Then that we are fine. We already have such let's say such developments in other parts of the world. Sudan was divided in two countries just recently. And it happened because of these internal processes. Again, if this will be something relevant to Afghanistan, according to the views of Afghan society, Afghan people, Afghan politicians, then we don't have any objections, I think. We shouldn't have any objections. It's their choice.
Yeah, right. So
but trying to make it from the outside, not in a natural way, I think will bring more and more new problems and issues for not only for Central and South Asia, Middle East, but for the whole world community.
Exactly. Yeah. And we got to leave it to them to make their choices. All right. So we move right along. I think just last two questions, and then we're going to get back to Prof. Hadaria. So division of nations, especially Pashtuns against Tajiks and Uzbeks, precipitates or hinders to better the process in the country.
I think we have covered it. Yeah, I think we have covered this question in my response to the previous one.
Exactly. Yeah, the division of nations just now, right? Okay, and of course, all right, how much does tribal division in Afghanistan could affect to build stable government, economy, state policy, aftermath of the following events?
Again, this issue is very popular.
Yeah.
Very popular in public domain that due to the tribal divisions, Afghanistan was not able to be united and having many internal difficulties. I think, of course, this historical background, traditions, and kind of specifics of Afghan society is very important. We should always consider them while we're kind of elaborating some new policies, strategies on Afghanistan. But I think this is not the only explanation why the country is failing to develop or failing to overcome the conflict. So there are many other issues. Let's start from corruption, which is very deep in Afghanistan. So this is a huge issue, and when there is a corruption, people do not concentrate on tribes and etc. So money decides everything. The other issue, again, the fact that stable government cannot be provided by the people whose power and authority depends depends on external actors. Again, one of the reasons why Ghani government collapsed so quickly, it had no popular support among the society. So no politicians, no civil servants, public officials, army had any motivation to protect this government and try to sustain it. If we go back to the last elections in Afghanistan, where again we saw this division between Abdullah and Ghani, they had a lot of misunderstanding, and each of them declared itself president only after intervention of the United States, as it happened also before in 2014. This issue was solved under the pressure of United States. But the country which always decide who should it be governed by, under the pressure and influence of external actor cannot expect some sustainable development. And the fact that Ghani, the elections were participated only with less of 30% of the population. So, and Ghani, considering the fact that Ghani had only just slightly above half of the votes, given to the president, we can say that only, let's say, 10 or 15%, again, if everything was fine with all these electoral procedures, which is also a challenge in Afghanistan, in an idealistic perspective, Mr. Ghani had only support of from 10 to 15% of Afghan population. So this is also something we should consider, while the lesson we should take from the history of Afghanistan, from the very recent history of Afghanistan, while we are building a new government, a new governance form in this country.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, great. With that last question, we would like to once again applaud Dr. Akram Umarov for the very enlightening sharing of today's lecture, all right, on the topic that we have looked at, Central and South Asia, connectivity, challenges, and opportunities. So we hope this is not the last time we see you, Dr. Akram. We would like to see more of you in future lectures, and very interesting sharing. You know, you've given us the insights that, you know, so in depth about Central and South Asia, which, you know, with Malaysia is just here. So I'm sure the students today, the participants coming from many countries, later Professor Hadaria will share with us. And so I would now like to welcome Professor Chemistry Dr. Hadaria Baharun, the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Internationalization at UITM Global, to deliver her concluding remarks of our event today. Professor Hadar, the screen is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Akram Umarov from the University of World Economy and Diplomacy in Uzbekistan. That was such a enlightening sharing session that we have from you, and we truly appreciate your time and your effort and your thoughts on Central and South Asia regional connectivity challenges and opportunities. So as the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Internationalization of UITM, I would like to make a little bit of concluding and appreciation remark to show our delight of this event. So let me see how I can get this to move. Right. So year 2021, let me go back to where we are at the moment, and I'm going back to your talk later. It is indeed a very, very important year for us to remember. Year 2021, 2022 are marked and remembered as very challenging, volatile years. Since the December of 2019, the coronavirus has been affecting countries and territories around the world. It has been a tough time for many, but as academics and researchers, it is called upon us to be very creative, innovative, adapting to new norms. The COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically changed the world and left countless people longing for our pre-pandemic ways of life. In the past month, everybody has been hoping to return to our normal daily activities like before. While many, we may not have normality, we can show our resilience to adopt and adapt to our new norms. Now, the current crisis is unparalleled in its scale in the modern history. However, we have to remain constructive and forge ahead for a better and stronger 2021. I believe that it is appropriate for us to continue collaboratively developing and carrying out programs and impactful activities to further enhance our presence in the global arena. I am very happy to see a big audience this afternoon on this virtual platform, especially now that we have to continue with the ever-developing new normals due to the situations of COVID-19 recently. Congratulations and thank you to every single audience for choosing to be here this afternoon. Let's progress together. This is our 5th IPLS, International Partner Lecture Series of year 2021. And on this auspicious occasion, we have the pleasure of hosting Dr. Akram Umarov of the University of World Economy and Diplomacy, Uzbekistan, who spoke on the highly enticing title, The Central and South Asia Regional Connectivity, Challenges and Opportunity. Indeed, this is a significant milestone in the relationship between Malaysia and Uzbekistan, UITM, and University of World Economy and Development. Thank you, Dr. Akram Umarov, for your time, passion, and willingness to share your thoughts and experience with us today. I certainly think that our audience today, from inside and outside of UITM, inside and outside of Malaysia, have benefited tremendously and are becoming better informed through your sharing session. It is indeed eye-opening to understand the approaches adopted by Central and South Asian countries to the currently much highlighted Afghanistan conflicts and development. It's a very, very uncertain, volatile situation at the moment, and we are avidly watching for any development, hopefully for the better of our development in that region. So Dr. Akram Umarov, at the maximum today, there were more than 130 participants in the UITM International Partner Lecture Series of this is fifth, 2021. And the participants come from obviously Malaysia, Uzbekistan, and we do have our guests from Indonesia, Russia, and Ethiopia. So on the platform of WebEx and also Facebook Live. So that's extremely exciting. But I would like to congratulate the Department of International Affairs, UITM Global, to warmly applaud the organizers, the DIA of UITM Global, on this milestone event, especially our moderator of today, Dr. Zainab Muhammad Noor, and her strong DIA team for bravely and enthusiastically taking on the challenge of carrying out this electronic lecture series. The talk, the discussions were very, very rousing and interesting. So thank you very much. Let's give our applause to the speakers and also the organizers. Thank you.
So many thanks again. So I think I talked too much today, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. So it was my privilege to deliver this presentation today for your university's audience, for the audience of your partners and guests. And I hope this exchange and this cooperation will not be just one time. And of course, we have already established relations, and hopefully we will continue to expand this cooperation in different areas, and we will elaborate more on different international projects and partnership on these issues. Thanks a lot for your kind invitation, for your excellent questions, very interesting ones. I enjoyed it a lot and wish you good luck in all your endeavors. Thanks a lot.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akram. So once again, a big round of virtual clap to Dr. Akram. Well done. All right. So last but not least, so once again, thank you to Prof. Hadaria for the concluding remarks. And of course, as a token of our gesture for long-term memory of today's event, we would invite everyone to come out, turn on their videos, and we're going to have a group photo together. All right? So all the participants, please turn on your videos. So let's wait for all the participants. Maybe can we get a cue? Who's our photographer today? To cue us, please.
Susie. We're just waiting for a couple more to appear on the camera.
All right. So let everyone get on the videos and then turn on their videos.
Here.
So, who's queuing us, please? Yeah.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, smile. One more. Okay, I'm just going to go to the second page. Keep on smiling. Keep on smiling. Keep on shining and smiling. All right, done. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ushna. So once again, thank you, everybody. Thank you also, Mr. Elbeck, for supporting our program as always from the Republic of Uzbekistan Embassy. All right, the embassy, yeah, right, in Malaysia. Thank you very much, Ms. Elbeck. And of course, once again, thank you to all the audience. You have made it possible. So, inshallah, we'll see you again soon. Assalamualaikum. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, thank
you.
I forgot to say in Uzbekistan, I would say Rahmat, meaning thank you.
Very Arabic.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Very much.
Thank you, Mr. Elbeck. Thank you. Bye-bye. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.